There was a time when gold shimmered in crowns and coffers, admired for what it represented, yet largely irrelevant to whether people survived the year. Salt, meanwhile, decided everything that mattered. Who could eat, who could travel, who could fight. Gold symbolized status, salt sustained life. Civilizations did not expand because their treasuries glittered brighter than their neighbors. They expanded because their soldiers were fed, their food preserved, and their populations carried through winters, wars, and droughts. For most of human history, nothing accomplished that more reliably than salt. Armies followed its routes. Governments seized control of it. Entire systems of law, taxation, and punishment formed around a substance so ordinary today we scatter it without thought. When access became restricted, people did not debate policy. They resisted, smuggled, rebelled. All over white crystals we now associate with convenience rather than survival. That irony only exists because modern abundance hides how precarious life once was. Food spoiled quickly. Supply lines broke easily. One bad season could erase generations of progress. Civilization, it turns out, is defined not by what it celebrates, but by what it forgets. Salt was one of them, shaping power silently until abundance made it invisible again. To understand why salt once outweighed gold in real value, you have to imagine a world where abundance did not exist as a default condition. No refrigeration humming quietly in the background, no global shipping networks delivering food year-round, no preservatives engineered to stretch shelf life beyond natural limits. In the ancient and medieval world, food was not a lifestyle choice. It was an existential challenge. Meat decayed rapidly. Harvests arrived once a year and failed often. A single storm, drought, or invasion could tip entire regions into starvation. Cities survived on narrow margins, permanently exposed to collapse. Salt solved that fragility. Not because it added flavor, but because it bought time. By drawing moisture out of food, salt slowed decay and blocked bacterial growth. Fish could be cured, meat could be stored, grain could be protected. What had once spoiled in days could now last months. That single chemical property reshaped human organization. Armies no longer had to live off the land. Cities no longer depended entirely on nearby farms. Populations could concentrate, specialize, and grow. Salt did not just preserve food. It preserved continuity. This distinction separates symbolic wealth from functional power. Gold held value because people agreed to admire it. Salt held value because life required it. Human bodies cannot function without sodium. Animals cannot survive without it. Agricultural systems break down when it disappears. That biological demand made salt unavoidable. Once something becomes unavoidable, it becomes leverage. The ancient world understood this intuitively, long before economic theory existed to describe it. The Romans built roads not only to move legions, but to move salt. The Via Salaria connected inland populations directly to coastal salt works, ensuring steady flow across the empire. Soldiers were compensated not merely with coin, but with salt rations that guaranteed survival. From that practice came language we still use, reminding us that wages began not as abstract numbers, but as access to life itself. Where salt traveled reliably, stability followed. Yet salt possessed a crucial trait that made it especially powerful. It was unevenly distributed. Geography determined access. Some regions sat atop salt mines, others relied on evaporation pools, many had neither. That imbalance created predictable routes, limited production centers, and points of control. Once control becomes possible, governance follows. Where governance exists, taxation soon appears. At that moment, salt ceased to be a resource alone. It became an instrument of authority. States quickly recognized the strategic advantage of controlling salt. Unlike land or income, salt consumption could not be postponed or hidden. People might conceal wealth, they could not avoid eating. Salt moved through society in regular, measurable quantities. It was essential, visible, and constant. That made it ideal for taxation. Governments did not need to chase profits. They could attach revenue directly to survival. In China, state salt monopolies emerged early and endured for centuries. Production and distribution were tightly regulated. Revenue from salt-funded armies, bureaucracies, and territorial expansion. The system was not accidental. It was deliberate statecraft. Control the salt, and the population remained dependent. Similar patterns appeared across Europe, where medieval kingdoms imposed rigid controls on who could purchase salt, how much they could buy, and at what price. Smuggling became a serious crime because it threatened more than order. It threatened the fiscal foundation of the state. Salt's price had little to do with rarity. It had everything to do with restriction. Regulation transformed necessity into pressure, and pressure reshaped loyalty. Nowhere did this dynamic become more visible than in France, where the salt tax known as the gabelle became a symbol of injustice. Rates varied by region. Some communities were forced to purchase minimum quantities, regardless of need. Penalties for evasion were harsh. For populations already living on thin margins, salt became not just expensive, but degrading. Resentment did not explode instantly, it accumulated. People cheated when they could, smuggled when possible, complained quietly, until complaints hardened into anger. The gabelle did not cause revolution by itself, but it revealed a dangerous truth. When the state monetizes survival unevenly, legitimacy erodes. Authority weakens not through ideology but through hunger. This pattern extended far beyond Europe. Across the Sahara, massive caravans carried salt across deserts to regions rich in gold, but poor in preservation. In parts of West Africa, salt blocks were exchanged weight for weight with gold dust. To modern observers, the trade seems inverted. In reality, it was rational. Gold could not keep food edible. Salt could. Power followed utility, not beauty. Trade routes, city locations, and imperial boundaries were shaped by access to salt. Control the flow, and you control logistics. Control logistics, and outcomes follow. Salt never dazzled. It operated quietly, relentlessly, shaping history without spectacle. For centuries, that quiet dominance endured. Like all systems built on scarcity, salt's power depended on limits. Geography constrained supply. Technology constrained preservation. Those constraints granted leverage to whoever controlled access. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, those limits dissolved. Not through rebellion, not through collapse, but through innovation. Refrigeration extended freshness. Canning stabilized storage. Industrial processing scaled preservation beyond natural boundaries. Supply chains widened. Production increased. Salt did not lose value overnight. It simply stopped being decisive. What was once essential became abundant. What was once controlled became invisible. Salt faded into the background of daily life, no longer a bottleneck worth fighting over. As salt's grip loosened, power did not vanish. It relocated. States replaced salt taxes with other revenue sources. Monopolies dissolved quietly. Smuggling disappeared because survival was no longer restricted. Cheap salt meant full shelves. The most powerful commodity of the ancient world did not fail. It outlived its strategic relevance. That transition matters because it reveals how value truly works. Salt mattered not because of its substance, but because of its position at the intersection of necessity, control, and invisibility. People ignored it until it was missing. States relied on it without advertising the dependence. When access tightened, consequences were immediate and human. Hunger does not wait for theory. The pattern did not end with salt. It repeated. Today, power no longer organizes itself around salt pans or mines. It organizes around energy grids, data infrastructure, water systems, shipping lanes, semiconductors, and payment networks. These systems are boring when they work. It's catastrophic when they don't. Their value lies in stability, not admiration. Inflation hurts most when essentials rise, not luxuries. When survival costs increase, people do not feel poorer. They feel cornered. The margin for error disappears. Politics destabilize rapidly because biology refuses compromise. You can delay investment. You cannot delay eating. Systems that monetize survival to aggressively do more than extract wealth. They drain trust. Salt taught this lesson early. The most powerful systems are not built around what people celebrate, but around what they depend on. Gold dazzles. Infrastructure governs. Salt promised continuity, not riches. Continuity remains the foundation of every stable order. Power followed salt, yet not because it impressed anyone, but because life depended on it. We no longer weigh crystals against gold, but the structure salt revealed is still intact. Essential systems still decide who moves, who adapts, and who breaks under pressure. History doesn't fade. It changes its disguise. If this shifted the way you see value, scarcity, and control, stay with this channel, because the past isn't distant. It's operational. Subscribe. We'll keep uncovering the quiet forces shaping wealth, power, and the systems you live inside every single day.